Well, greetings and salutations. I now call to order this meeting of Movie Club. I am, of course, your host, John Campea. Great to have you guys here. Of course, joined by our fellow Movie Club members, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing?
Namaste.
And right beside him, of course, Ray Orris here. Ray, how you doing?
What's up?
And as we call to order this installment of Movie Club, we are, of course, here to discuss the great, my favorite, Tom Cruise movie, All You Need Is Kill, also known as Live, Die, Repeat, also known as Edge of Tomorrow. Quite possibly, it up there with John Carter, the worst marketed film in the history of cinema. I remember when trailers started coming out for this, nobody had any idea. First, it had this surreal kind of warpy kind of like, they played that, "This is not the end" music, and just like weird. It's like watching the trailers, just like, what is this movie? And nobody knew.
The marketing department didn't know.
No, the marketing department had no idea what to do with it. And then the movie came out, and so it didn't have a great opening weekend, but thankfully word of mouth got out about it, and it did much better than we thought. Like I said at the top, this is my favorite Tom Cruise movie. The action is on point. And now, I've heard a lot of people over the years say it's just Groundhog Day. And there is an element of truth to that. Sure, there's absolutely, like, this, Groundhog Day, Happy Death Day. It's been done, the idea that you have to live and repeat this day, and you try to make changes along the way. Sure, but, like, not every cop show is Barney Miller. A lot of people are going, what show? Yeah, never mind. That was from like when I was a child. But I mean, yeah, sure, it's been done, but it's a very different kind of movie, and it's just so good. What did you think about this movie?
Well, it's based on a manga, a Japanese comic, and one of the things that struck me about this movie, it's not so much Groundhog Day, as to me, John, it's the ultimate video game movie, and it's not based on a video game, but in terms of how you play a video game. One of the things I did not understand when I watched this, and I thought it was so genius, is that, you play a video game and you move up a level and you die, and you have to figure out how to make it to the next level.
Right.
And that's what they incorporate the very idea of gaming, what modern gaming is. Tom Cruise becomes the ultimate gamer, except it's not virtual.
Avatar.
He's the avatar in his own life. And I thought it was a genius idea that is so well developed. And like we were talking about this earlier, from the opening montage that sets the stage of the world. Like, where's the world at? Okay, we've been invaded by an alien force. They've taken over for 5 years. They've marched across Europe. There's no way to stop them. Tom Cruise is like the voice of the military. He's up there, giving speeches on primetime network television, on the news shows, the 24/7 news cycle. It's got such an interesting opening. And when you're watching this, it struck me, I'm like, even though I've seen this movie like, I don't know, 20 times, I'm watching this again. I watched it last night to prepare for this. And I love this movie. It's so intriguing. And if you've never seen this movie before, and if you like science fiction and alien invasion movies, the first 20 minutes of this movie is so great. I mean, it draws you in, and you're like, what is going on here? And it's just, oh man, I love the setup of this film. And you don't really know, because you don't see the aliens right away. You don't quite know what's happening.
You just hear about it.
I mean, what do you think, Ray? Do you dig it?
Well, you know what's funny about Ray? As Ray and I were talking about this yesterday, I think you might have been here. It's like Ray was all disappointed that we decided to do Edge of Tomorrow, because it's like, man, I like it when you do movies that I haven't seen yet, so it gives me an excuse to watch for the first time. This is actually a movie Ray has seen.
Yeah. Wow. The marketing was so bad for this movie.
It was.
I didn't catch it until I think it went on one of the cable networks that we had free one weekend. Really. That's when I saw it. And I was like, wait a second. This movie is pretty good. And I know it was like one of those free weekends where they repeat their biggest movie throughout the whole weekend. I think I watched it every time it came on, at least parts of it, after I watched it the first time. Because I was like, when did this movie come out? I like the suits that they were wearing. Reminds me a lot of Gears of War for some reason.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like
Remind me of Aliens, of
Aliens.
smaller
Well,
version
now-
of the Ripley outfit.
Well,
right?
now Aliens makes sense to me because, like I said, for Movie Club, I watched that for the first time, and now the Alien reference makes sense to me now. There's a lot going for this movie that I really liked. Like you said, the patterns in video games that people learn to get through levels.
Yeah.
That's a little back then. Video games are a lot harder now, but I do see what that reference like from the older video games where every level was constructed so you memorize patterns and you go through it over and over again. Me, I'm not that type of video gamer. If you tell me that's what a game's about, I won't play it.
Oh yeah,
It's just a
I'm the type of
frustration.
video gamer that the first 3 times I try something, if I can't do it in 3 tries, I put down the remote control and I walk away. That's my video game style.
And then throughout this film, I imagine myself in Tom Cruise's spot, and I'm like, would I just actually sit there? Like, they would do it in montages but he had to do everything over and over again.
Yeah.
Every exact thing. I would sit there and just not do anything anymore. The next day I'll be like,
But you know
forget
what?
it.
I bet there was probably stretches of days, because remember they had that one scene in where he did just give up. He's like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go to the bar.
Right.
And I'm just going to sit there and whatever. But even that, he started to realize, okay, that's not an option either. So
Yeah.
the only way out of this is to muscle through it and get through it. And like one of the things that jumped out to me the most when I started watching, the first time I saw this movie was like all the different ways he would die. But one of the best ways, and this is going to sound weird, but I love that not every kill had to be some kind of spectacular weird thing. Like he hits at one point, where it's like, he sees somebody, starts to just run toward them. Hey, and a truck just drove by and hit him. And I remember that one like caught me totally off guard. I was like, whoa, I wasn't ready for that one. So they started to put all that kind of stuff into it too. And it was just so creative. So you get, first of all, just a story. I'll tell you one of the problems I had though. Here's one of the problems that I had. He shows up at this military base when he wakes up after being drugged, right? Wakes up at this military base. It's like, I'm a major. Like, sure you are. You're private. You're a deserter, and blah, blah, blah. We just introduced the movie with, he's the face of the military on television. You can't tell me not all of those soldiers knew who he was. He was the face of the war effort. So that part to me, I found a little hard to believe, that suddenly shows up at this military base and nobody recognized him. Come on. Like that part was a little silly to me. But other than that, and by the way, the late great Bill Paxton in this, like so good. Like everything from the way he would talk to the soldiers and all that kind of stuff. Like he was absolutely fantastic. I love seeing it. And you forget sometimes how big of a guy he was, that Bill Paxton was this big dude. Of course, he was standing next to Tom Cruise. So maybe, we'd all look like big dudes there. But again, like from the dialogue was always sharp. The story progressed. The editing of this movie,
dude,
is like, you'd almost say like the writing is great, the story, but I mean, if the editing isn't done absolutely right, I don't think this movie takes off.
I completely agree with you. And, I love how this movie kind of is a misdirect, because in the beginning, you understand that, okay, there's this dire threat happening. You don't quite know what it is. But so Tom Cruise is like this. He's kind of like the character of Caffey in A Few Good Men, where he's used to pleading out his cases and he's never had to actually try a case.
Right. Yeah.
And he's this kind of cocky, I went to college and I never really went into the military. So he's playing that character again. And he's like, no, I'm like the face of the military. I go into talk shows. And when he sits down with, the big British
Brendan Gleeson.
When he sits down with Brendan Gleeson, and he's having this conversation. Well, you realize I'm not going to really, go to war, and I'm here to do this thing. And Brendan Gleeson's like, oh, no, you're going to go in with the front line. You're going to go in with the team. And
you've been transferred into my command.
Yeah, and it's so great. And you see that he's a coward. He doesn't want to fight. And you think that the story is going to be about this guy that, he's going to have to be roped into fighting when he doesn't really want to.
And then he'll find the hero within.
Yes. And that's supported later with what Bill Paxton's saying, the crucible of battle or whatever. And this is before you understand what this movie's about, and then he gets dropped into it. I mean, not since Saving Private Ryan is there an assault on a beach.
Yeah.
That's more harrowing than this. And it's harrowing from the beginning. I mean, the dropship, they come in and people are getting smoked left and right. I mean, just horrible. And I was terrified the first time I watched this movie for poor Tom Cruise. What's going to happen? And then when he dies, and wakes up again, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Now we're off to the races. And it's the first 20 minutes. And like you said, the editing, it's so brilliantly done. It's so beautifully made. And the visual effects are top notch.
Yep.
It's just lush to look at. And Cruise is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
And the way he gets, like, I love this one scene when he gets on the beach and he turns around and he starts running away in his power suit and someone grabs him and pulls it. It's so entertaining. It's so good.
You talk about some of the good effects, right? One of the things, and I forgot about this till I was watching this movie again the other night, is his first death.
Oh yeah.
When he kills the blue
Ended up.
and it bleeds on him, and the effect of his face literally dissolving. Like it was, what's the word? It's shaking. It's
dude.
disturbing.
But you never see Tom Cruise and that disintegrate like that.
No, like that was like horrifying.
And it's his face.
Yeah, it's his-
you're looking, and that's what
It's
makes
his
it even
moneymaker.
more. Yeah, that's what's even
And
more
before
horrifying.
before you know, like he goes through the death thing, just seeing that, just for a split second, I was like, "Is that it? What's happened from now
Yeah,
on?"
that's the end of the movie.
You know,
We're
done.
This
I
is
found-
not the end.
I found out of a lot of the Tom Cruise movies I've seen, his character, the way he played it, I found him very likable. Like he was like, you know, very passive aggressive. Like when it came to actual physical, like the war stuff. But I like his thought process. I like the way he figured things out. I just found him enjoyable to watch in this movie, like throughout the whole thing.
And what's really cool is when he would hit parts, and we as the audience didn't know, has he gotten to this part yet before? Like when they go into the house where the helicopter is, right? Like they're playing that out as if this was their first time there. And then we realize he's been through this a number of times already. And that
Yeah.
kind of guessing game for even us as the audience was really interesting.
And let's not forget Miss Emily,
Oh,
baby oil blunt in this movie. How much baby oil did she put on herself? And she goes and asks Tom Cruise, "Is there something on my face?" "No, it's all the baby oil you have on you." Nobody sweats like that. I would have been looking. Everyone would be looking. I'm sorry.
Hey, here's how many, I honestly don't know the answer to this. How many times in this movie did they do the Catherine Zeta-Jones thief shot of her when Tom Cruise first sees her and
Oh,
she's laying on the
yes.
floor in the middle and she does the push up?
Oh
with
yeah,
her back?
that you know.
That's all kind of number one, badass, and number two, sexy.
Yeah,
I mean, that
whoa.
was like, how many times? 6 times? Did they show
There were
that
6
shot?
times.
And it was worth every single
Is that a
time.
push up? Really? I kind of call that the dolphin.
I'll say she pushed herself
Yeah.
up rather than a push-up. Like she was just kind of getting up to pay attention.
Dude.
And every time she did it, her tricep
I know.
would like rip out. And it's
'Cause of
like
the baby oil.
Okay, it's that baby oil.
but these aliens too. You know, Raw. If you think like me, you felt like eating a big plate of calamari afterwards.
Well, it's great because they got the drones and then they've got these alphas, you know,
Right.
and I
The
really
blues.
loved at first you can't. I like the fact that they were never never still enough at the
They're never
beginning that
stationary.
you
They're always moving.
Yeah, they're always moving, and then but they did give these alphas these faces that were so great. I mean,
Yeah.
these terrifying.
They almost
faces.
look like a Balrog. The two with the way the energy be inside
that's
their mouths. and stuff.
that's exactly right. They look like the Balrog, totally. But the fact that they're so fast is
Oh,
just
and the
it's-
tentacles.
Oh yeah, just
They're
terrifying. And then
outmatched.
they'll tear you up. You know that from the beginning that the situation is dire. But I have to give a shout out. You know, Tom Cruise worked with Chris McQuarrie for the first time on Valkyrie because Chris McQuarrie wrote Valkyrie.
And I love that. I love that.
Yeah, Academy Award winning screenwriter for Usual Suspects.
I don't think
And then
I've seen that. Valkyrie. Which one was that one?
that's in World War II.
Oh, okay,
trying to
okay,
assassinate Hitler. But after that, they made Jack Reacher together. And then after Jack Reacher, before Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise kept McQuarrie to rewrite all the scripts, and he gets first position screenwriting credit on this movie. He also rewrote Top Gun Maverick. And so this long-standing relationship between now a director and a writer and Tom Cruise, it's one of the most, I think when we look back at cinema history, the McQuarrie-Tom Cruise partnership has led to so many great movies, beginning with Valkyrie and Jack Reacher, but on to Top Gun, then the Mission Impossible films are going to end up doing 4 together. And McQuarrie is such a smart writer. The way he takes this could have been, you could have made this movie for like $10 million and made it a cheesy B movie. I mean, you really could have, but it's so well, the script and the ideas are so well presented. Like you said, once they get into, have they been here before?
Yeah.
Can you imagine trying to write this script? Like, where are we? And figuring it out.
Can I bring up one small thing that a little small storyline within this big war storyline? His progression with Emily Blunt in this movie.
The evolution
when he
of the
finds
relationship.
out like the reveals that she actually is opening up to him, and then the next day when he wakes up, like his face would be like, I got a step further here too. Like, you know what I mean?
Think of
Like
progressing the game.
Imagine if you could replay all the times you've hit on maybe someone you're interested in, and if you could replay that, man, that would be great. You would figure out exactly what to do.
I love that picture too, where she's got her Final Fantasy VII sword over
That
her shoulder.
she
there.
was
The hero of her nut.
nuts. That training scene where she's jumping and killing those things, that was cool. I thought that was one of the coolest parts.
By the way, you brought up Christopher McQuarrie, but we should mention like the direction of the film, Doug Liman, who I like to refer to as my jumper director, who directed me in Jumper.
That's right.
I just forgot about that. A terrific job of directing this film. Like the script is there, but again, if the direction isn't there, if that editing isn't there, it doesn't work nearly as well. And I'll say one other thing that I've always had a problem with this, and I watched it again and I still have a problem with it. The ending to me still doesn't make a lot of sense. Like he kills the Omega at the end, and the blood gets on him. Okay. But he was dead by the time the blood got on him. At least I thought he was, but even not. So it resets, but not properly because the Omega's already dead. Like, why did it reset the Omega's still dead, even though the Omega hadn't died yet? You know, if you go back to the beginning of the day, that Omega was alive.
Well, no, it was alive, but I'll tell you what I think happened was they got deep enough into Paris, into France, because remember, their team, that original team left, so all the stuff that happened, they got there first. They got there before the invasion happened because they were able to take off and leave. So by the time they blew up the Omega, the original initial invasion hadn't occurred yet. You know, because they jumped the time.
That's right.
So when they destroy the Omega, they were getting ready for this big invasion, and suddenly their forces dropped dead. So it's because ultimately they were able to get, and that's another thing I loved about this movie, that these schleprock troops that Tom Cruise meets, like the dumb battalion, that the ass
J Squad,
the ass end of space battalion, they get to be useful. And I thought that was so cool how they brought everything back. The script was so tight in terms of its characterization. It becomes kind of like this getting to know you, dating, even though they're protecting the universe from these aliens. It still is the story. You see this developing relationship between these two characters that respect each other.
By the way, Insomniac 101 just gave a really good point to us brought up, is by the end of the movie, Tom Cruise is the Omega. And you know what? I think Insomniac is totally right.
He is right.
He is the Omega by the end of that.
Yeah.
So, okay. So that, you know what? Thank you, Insomniac. You just put that to rest for me. So, I mean, listen, action, top notch. Deaths, top notch. Relationship evolutions, top notch. Dialogue, top notch.
Effects.
Story,
Yep.
top notch. Effects, top notch. I mean, the performances, top notch. That's why, to me, this is my favorite Tom Cruise movie. I was watching this again yesterday. I was like, God, like every minute I was just completely enthralled with it.
There isn't a moment where you're not marveling at this
right.
movie. There's not one bad moment.
And then how hopeless do you feel when after they got duped by the general and he wakes up in the hospital realizing he didn't die to reset the day, and now if he dies, he's dead. And like all of a sudden, like, I remember I was watching it again. Like, I've seen the movie before. I'm sitting there watching it again. I'm like, oh, that feeling of they're screwed. Like, how screwed do you feel at that point? That it was set up so well.
Yeah.
And she's getting ready to stab him again. It's like, no, I don't have the power anymore. Like, that was so good.
Oh man,
so good. And it's all of it was set up and earned. And I can't imagine, like, I always marvel at the writing of this movie when I watch it, because it must have been so difficult to figure out where you were at the script at any time. Like, well, if this happens, this means here's where we're at. It's just a marvel of screenwriting.
Keeping track of that would have been a nightmare.
And Tom Cruise, John, and Ray went through this science fiction period. He made Minority Report and War of the Worlds with Spielberg.
Yeah, don't forget Oblivion.
Then he made Oblivion with Joseph Kosinski, who directed Maverick, and then he did this. And I think all of those movies are very respectable. And I'm glad that Tom Cruise went through this sci-fi phase. Maybe he'll do it again.
I didn't watch Minority Report, but I do like.
Oh, Minority Report's great.
You'll love
I do
Minority
like those
Report.
three: The War of the Worlds, Oblivion, and this movie. I did like.
I gotta admit, I wasn't big on Oblivion. Did not love Oblivion, I'll be honest with you.
It works. You know what? As I've watched that movie over the years, I think it's aged really well.
There was like a Mass Effect feeling to Oblivion. That's why I guess I liked it. Like,
And it looks incredible.
Yeah.
It's really beautifully made.
All right, guys. Well, listen, that's our thoughts on my favorite Tom Cruise movie, Edge of Tomorrow. Just a fantastic, fantastic film. So now let's do the real important work here of going over to you guys and hearing what you have to say about this movie. Now, before we get to that, though, we want to take a second and thank the sponsor of this meeting of the Movie Club, our friends at Athletic Greens. Hey, guys, we want to take a second to thank the sponsor of this video, Athletic Greens. Now, when you get really busy, and you guys know that Ann and I are really busy, one of the first things you sacrifice is eating healthy. And I simply have never eaten enough vegetables in my diet, I admit it. So for a long time, I've been looking for a really good all-in-one supplement that helps me get those nutrients and vitamins that my body needs. And thank goodness I found Athletic Greens AG1. So what is Athletic Greens AG1? Well, with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, and probiotics to help you start your day right. And for me and Ann, it's easy. We get up in the morning, we pour a big glass of water and add one scoop of AG1. So many people today are taking some kind of multivitamin, and it's important to choose one with high quality ingredients that your body will actually absorb. And it's cheaper than getting all those different supplements yourself. And on top of giving you all those vitamins and nutrients, it also supports better sleep and quality of recovery, and supports mental clarity and alertness. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/mailbag. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/mailbag to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And thank you to our friends at Athletic Greens for sponsoring this episode of Movie Club. By the way, before we get into the live question, I want to mention this. It's funny because a lot of people wondering, where's the sequel? Where's the sequel? There would be already a sequel done and have already been in the theaters today if it wasn't for a movie called Mary Poppins. Because as you can imagine, Emily Blunt is busy, Doug Liman is busy, Tom Cruise is busy. And they finally found a window of time. Doug Liman and Tom Cruise found a window of time that, hey,
I remember.
Here's a 7-month block, 6-month block, we can make this movie. So they get a hold of Emily Blunt. It's like, we're ready to do a sequel to Edge of Tomorrow. Can you make this time work? And she goes, guys, you should have called me a week ago. I just said yes to doing Mary Poppins. And Mary Poppins is why we do not have an Edge of Tomorrow 2.
Oh, man.
I know, because that Mary Poppins movie did not turn out to be all that good.
Oh, it wasn't? It didn't?
No.
She was great, though.
She was wonderful, but I mean, the movie wasn't all that great. Anyway, let's now go over and hear what you guys have to say about Edge of Tomorrow. So, Rob, what do we got?
We got Zach Marcello says, so pumped for this. MC. Totally missed this in theaters, but saw it on Netflix in 2015 and instantly became one of my faves. Love Emily Blunt in this.
You know what? This was funny. Ray and I were just talking about this. I didn't know this movie had been on Netflix because when I went to watch again, I realized it's not on any of the streamers.
Nope.
No.
So I had to rent it for $3.
I rented it too.
Rented it for $3 to watch it, but it was not available. So I didn't know it was available on Netflix there for a while. So thanks for letting us know about that.
Oh, I have that 4K disc that came out last week.
Well, of course you do.
This is where you win. This is where physical
you
media.
spent 20-something bucks on it, but I had to spend $3.
That's
All
true.
right. What's next?
Tim Platt says, almost a decade later, and it still holds up beautifully. If Avatar and Top Gun can get sequels, so can this. #believe.
Well, there's a difference. Avatar was the biggest film in history.
Yeah.
And the biggest box office film in history. And while thankfully Edge of Tomorrow managed with some good positive word of mouth make a bit of resurgence after a so-so opening weekend, it wasn't exactly a huge blockbuster, right? So yeah, I would not compare Avatar to the biggest money-making film in the history of film to Edge of Tomorrow, but we can always keep our fingers crossed. But listen, it seems weird to say it, but now that he is in his 60s,
Yeah, I think it's.
the clock on Tom Cruise being able to do these kinds of films
Yeah.
is not over, but it's a window that's closing. So if he is going to do another Edge of Tomorrow, it's got to happen soon. Like this can't be something that goes into production in 2025.
Right.
Right? It would have to probably be pretty soon. So fingers crossed. All right, what's next?
Kal-El says, one of my favorite movies that was under the radar, but I watched it 3 or 4 times in theaters. I still remember John and Amy Rose doing a spoiler discussion on this movie back in the AMC days. #good times.
I remember that. Yeah, and just being, again, like one of the good things about this being one of the worst marketed movies in history was that it was such a pleasant surprise.
Right.
Like watching is like I never would have guessed that this movie was this good. And so, yeah, again, sometimes terrible things like a bad marketing campaign can lead to little silver linings like being so pleasantly surprised.
Always a good thing.
Always a good thing. All right, what's next?
Macaulay Gallagher says, my favorite Tom Cruise film. I read the manga All You Need Is Kill recently. It's so good. The film absolutely does justice to the source material. That's good to hear. I've never read it, so.
But Rob, I got to ask you. Here's the thing. Edge of Tomorrow is such a fuckstick, like afternoon soap opera title of a movie. This sounds like an afternoon soap opera. When we come back tomorrow for the Edge of Tomorrow.
The Edge After Tomorrow.
It's the Edge After Tomorrow. It's such a bad title. Like
It's so
when
bad.
you're trying to name stuff in the entertainment industry, you want something that's going to stick in people's minds, right? All You Need Is Kill is a name you never forget. It was the name of the original source material. Now, I'm not saying it should have kept it because that was the name of the source material. You got to keep. No. It's a great title that you never forget.
No.
So why do you think they changed the name of that? From
You know
All
what?
You Need Is Kill?
I think it had something to do with grammar or something like that. And that's not an appealing title. What does that mean? Like somebody said, what does that mean? I mean, like in hindsight, like you said, John, all you need is kill. You hear that, you don't forget it. And you're like, what does that mean? It seems like so hardcore, like all you need. That's the only thing you need is kill, kill, kill. And I'm sure somebody thought that in the marketing department, like, well, we can't call a movie that. It was some ridiculous decision. And then, like you were saying, Edge of Tomorrow, whatever. These are the sands in the hourglass and the edge, whatever. And it's the worst title maybe in the history of Hollywood.
By the way, Sam Sudeep in the live chat also would have been a perfectly good title. I mean, and you're allowed to say this on broadcast TV, so you could have made this title. And it works with the movie. Full Metal Bitch. Which was her nickname in the movie.
The
Full
heroine
Metal
of
Bitch.
her, yeah.
Yep, the Full Metal Bitch. Like, holy shit, who would have ever forgotten that name, too?
Yeah, but
Like, that would have been a good one.
somebody would have been pissed about that.
I'm sure. All right.
But yeah, it's too bad that they gave it that title because even now I struggle to remember
Yep, so do I.
what it was called.
Yep. You never would
Even on the show live. Tim Platt says Bill freaking Paxton
Yep.
brings life to every project he shows up in, and he's so good. Why did they call it Science Kill or Science Hill? I don't care.
I like in my head canon, I believe he's what the Marine in Aliens grew up to be. In my own head canon, it's the same character. John, that makes no sense. I know that makes no sense. You can just shut the hell up, thank you. That's the way it is in my head canon.
And I love the fact that he goes in with the troops.
Yep.
You know, he's
He doesn't
great.
talk the talk. He walks.
He walks the walk, man.
All right, what's next?
You will be baptized. Mark Nadal says, interesting kills in that movie. That's another thing.
Yep.
The deaths are hilarious. I mean, they never take it too seriously. I mean, sometimes you're going, like when he gets hit by the truck, that's shocking. But then sometimes the deaths are horrific, and other times you just laugh. Go, oh!
He's like, I think I broke my back. I can only feel my lips.
That line is so funny. When he's sitting there, goes, yeah,
He's just like this.
I think I broke my back. I can only feel my lips.
And I love the first time Emily Blunt just takes out the gun.
Yes, that was a nice little.
But then
nice
even
little
when he
thing.
gets like, no, I'm fine. You broke your
Yeah,
leg.
that-
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yeah, that
Boom.
was clever right there too.
Oh, what's next?
Attack of the Mushi says, you'd be happy to know I own the 4K Steelbook, John.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Attack the Mushi. I'm real happy for you, but I don't care. But I am happy for you. But really, I'm sure you just made Rob proud. Rob's very proud.
Well, I don't have that 4K Steelbook because our friend Cliff Stevenson got me the Japanese All You Need Is Kill Steelbook that I put my 4K disc into.
Oh, that's nice.
But can I ask something? I only buy Blu-rays for special features. Did this have
Yeah, there's some good special features.
like in the suits and stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's cool.
Okay, see that's the part that interests me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Tim Platt says, so I just watched the trailers for this again, and just for kicks, and my God, is the tone way wrong in them. Laugh out loud. Hashtag, this is not the end.
This is not.
I've never
the
seen one
end.
trailer for this movie.
It's so emo.
I've never seen
It's
one
a
trailer for
total
this movie.
emo. Like just this is a thrilling movie with action and dynamic and
Baby
pace
oil.
and so much baby oil. And the trailers it made you think it was some kind of, we are now going to take a journey into the human mind. Ooh.
We should all open the show on top of the desk doing the push.
That's what we're doing on the John
The
Campea Show
numbers would
tomorrow.
have went.
I mean, honestly, I think that this is one of the great travesties of all modern studio marketing of the last 20 years.
That and John Carter. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and the trailers for this, like our viewer just astutely pointed out, were terrible.
Marketing and titles for both movies.
And yeah. And the problem with your idea, though, Ray, about the push is we don't have a lot of baby oil, so we'll have to use like coffee creamer. Let's pour coffee creamer.
I don't even know if I can do that with my,
Okay, what's next?
Josh Becker says, the ending and end credit song are awesome, and they are.
I cannot remember the.
I don't know the name of the song,
Yeah,
but it ends like a Marvel movie.
I let it
Okay.
play,
Sort
that
of.
song, whatever it was. I let it play. Yeah.
But he walks into the barracks again, and again,
And it just
one
cuts
more
to
push-up
black.
shot.
Oh, yeah.
of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I loved
do you
about
want?
this. It just cuts to him walking into seeing her and boom, cut to black.
Yep,
and the
that was a
music
good cut.
starts.
That was a good
It was
cut.
a really good cut.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was a really great way to end the film because they could have done this. Oh my God, we're reunited again. But we don't have to see them reunite. We've seen them reunited 100 times already.
Yep.
It's so good.
Do you think there's ever a couple times where he just walked in there and then just shot himself after seeing her do the push-up thing? Just for a couple of times.
I just,
was that a Rob joke?
I don't feel up to the training today. I'm feeling it right now.
I'm done.
All right, what's next?
William Bang says, I originally went to this because of Tom Cruise, but now I think of it as an Emily Blunt movie, which, bonus, also has it in him. Sequel or prequel, please?
He probably means also has him in it.
Has it? Well,
I've heard talk about that before, about the idea about, a prequel this would be really good. Hell no. I have no interest in a prequel. I have no interest in like a story that leads up to this that we know everything we need to know.
Well, as our viewer pointed out, if Tom Cruise is now the Omega, maybe they come after him.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, that could be I never thought of it until our viewer brought it up today, but that's how it ends.
It just reminded me of the funniest part of this movie. Remember when he's like, "Oh, it transfers in my blood," and have you tried everything? And
Maybe
then
I
he has
can
the robot
transfer
suit
it
on.
to you. She goes,
And
"I
he's
tried
like,
the blood
he's like,
transfusion."
"Have you tried every?" And you can see kind of the arms go like this, and she's like, "Have sex?" Yeah. And then he's like, how many times? And
Yes,
the chick
yes, I've
yells
tried that too. How many times have you tried it?
That's it was so funny.
That was a really good. But
was
you're
like,
right.
Tom.
It's his. You're right though. It's that subtle motion.
Yeah. You don't see it like it's not
Yeah,
obvious.
he doesn't go.
I know, but it's just like,
very subtle.
have you tried everything?
All right, what's next?
That's so funny.
Mr. Taco about it.
like that name.
Okay. Tim Platt says Groundhog Day plus Independence Day. What's wrong with that? Nothing.
Yeah, look, again, when people say, well, it's basically Groundhog Day, so it's definitely got elements of Groundhog Day, but what's wrong with that? I mean, like every movie takes elements of that have been in other movies and make it their own. Is there definitely Groundhog Day in this? Sure, but it definitely made it its own. And it definitely made its own thing about it, which is one of the reasons why I really like Happy Death Day, because Happy Death Day 2 did that as well. Took that basic conceit of Groundhog Day, but completely made it its own thing and did it in its own way, and it completely worked.
Totally works.
All right, what's next?
Now this one will be Mr. Taco about it. So speaking of Tom Cruise, I watched Minority Report, and it was good for 2/3 of it until it commits one of the worst writing tropes, the one you hate most, John.
I gotta admit, it's been
Do you know what it is,
10
Rob?
years since
I
I
don't know what
watched
the
it.
worst writing trope. I mean,
Well, no.
One of
so
them-
I've said this before. To me, there's a couple of tropes in movies that I always dislike. Number one, that if the hero in movie's in love with a girl who's already in a relationship, the guy she's in a relationship is a huge dick, like every single time. So that's one. But the one I hate the most is called Meet Me at Death Peak, where the hero trying to solve a murder gets a call, and it's from Mr. X. And Mr. X says on the phone, I figured out the identity of the killer.
that's what they're talking
To
about.
which the hero says, well, who is it? Not on the phone. Meet me at Death Peak at midnight. And sure enough, the hero will go to Death Peak and, oh no, Mr. X has been murdered, right? So that's probably the one he's talking
That's
about.
exactly what he's talking about.
Okay.
It's still a good movie, though.
I can't remember like I said, it's been over a decade since I've watched. I got to watch that one again,
You
too.
should watch it with you, Ray. You'll dig it.
All right.
Good.
What's
There's a lot of
next?
cool stuff in it. Ahmed E sends, this developed my lifelong crush on Emily Blunt.
I think a lot of look, obviously she splashed into the world with Anne Hathaway big hit film. With Meryl Streep.
Devil Wears
Oh, Devil Wears Prada.
She made her big entrance. Like that's where everybody really took notice of her because she was fantastic. Smaller role, super good in it though. But I think it was this movie. I think you're right. This was the movie that made a lot of people fall in love with her.
Yeah.
And this is a movie that's like, why is she not in a Marvel movie? Why is that lady not in a Disney or a DC movie? Right? It's totally. So I don't think you're alone, man. You're not alone. All right, baby oil. What's next?
Joel Bahari says, I've always loved Cruise. I went to see this movie with a friend who hated the couch jumping Cruise.
Oh, yeah, of course.
She only went to watch Cruise die a million times, ended up converting her. She's now a huge Tom Cruise fan.
Listen, I still remember, we talked about this recently because they made the announcement that they're probably going to do a spin-off movie of Tropic Thunder with his character, Les Grossman. But listen, people forget today when Tom Cruise was one of the biggest stars in the world, and then he had like kind of weird story after weird story, and then it kind of culminated in the whole couch jumping thing. And everybody, it's much like the Robert Downey Jr. thing, right? Everybody forgets that before Iron Man, his career was over. And I'm not going to say Tom Cruise's career was over. It wasn't, but it was definitely at a low point. And then along came Tropic Thunder and him fearlessly playing that Les Grossman character, doing something that nobody ever thought we'd see Tom Cruise doing. And all of a sudden, boom, winning cures everything, Rob.
Oh, yeah.
Because he had a big win with that character, and all of a sudden Tom Cruise is back in a hot thing again, and then he got on a roll with some really good movies after that, and it's...
Dude, I've been a cruiser my whole life. Cruiser meaning Tom Cruise
cruiser
fan.
my whole life.
I've been a cruiser since 1983 in Risky Business, but even before that when he was
Take them old records off the shelf, Rob.
Oh man, he was and then Taps. He was in Taps. And he was in the
I
Outsiders
forgot about
before that.
Taps.
Yeah, when he first started, and he was great. He always gave great performances. I mean, if you look at his output in the '90s, whether it was Rain Man or whether it was late '80s, Rain Man or A Few Good Men, he's always good.
Yeah.
A Color of Money. I love him in Color of Money.
Magnolia.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I loved him in Magnolia.
All right, what's next?
Dr. Spider-Man says Starship Troopers 2, Day of the Groundhog.
Starship Troopers 2 Kid. Oh, before I forget, I put up a poll asking our audience, did you rewatch Edge of Tomorrow this week in preparation of Movie Club here? 62% of you did not.
Oh,
decided you did
wow.
not. We had
a little debate before this.
We had a discussion wondering, like, how many people, because we all rewatched the movie we talked about on Movie Club, like in the days leading up to it. And so we had a little discussion beforehand about how many of our audience actually go back and rewatch the movie the week we're doing it. So
I lost.
Thank you for, I wasn't going to tell people that.
I lost.
Anyway, all right, what's next?
Daniel Vakura says, I loved Edge of Tomorrow, except for the ending where time shouldn't have reversed one last time. It should have been darker and no sequel is necessary.
Well, I mean, yeah, listen, there's an argument to be made that there is a more nihilistic ending you could have where, listen, Emily Blunt says to him, listen to me, neither of us are getting out of here. Because she volunteers to try to draw the alpha away. He's like, oh, no, it's going to kill you. And she's like, listen, neither of us are getting out of here. Like, this is it for both of us. Like, you're dead too. We're both dead. The only question is, do we succeed before we die? And there's absolutely an argument to be made that once the explosion goes off, that's it. That's the end of the movie. They win, but it's a tragic win. But what they did do was consistent with what had happened, that the blood they established early, if the blood of an alpha, and by extension, you'd figure an omega, gets into you, then you become that trigger. Now, again, I said, but why did it reset without the omega still being there? Like, it died in that future tense. Once you go back, you're now in a time when the omega was alive, whatever. And well, Tom Cruise is the omega, so that changes things. Anyway, with all that, it still worked. It still worked. Although, yes, they could have ended it like that, and you wouldn't hear a complaint from me.
Nope.
It'd be like, that's a dark ending, but what a powerful ending it would be. Like, I would have liked it.
And the best part about this movie for me was they confused me right at the end, like the last 5 minutes. And I never even cared if I got it or not. Because today I still don't get it. But I'm so into the movie, most of the movie, that I don't care.
So good, though.
All right, what's next?
Keith Abbott says, love this and Oblivion. Any news on the sequel?
None. The last news I heard on the sequel was Emily Blunt telling the story that Lyman and Tom Cruise got a hold of her, said, hey, we've got our production window to do Edge of Tomorrow 2. And she's like, you should have called me a week ago because I just committed to. That's the last I heard of it. Yeah. And now Cruise is booked for the next few years.
And don't hate me. I don't think this needs a sequel.
No movie needs a sequel.
Well, I mean, I would love to see one, but if they say no, we don't have time.
I've got it. They do Edge of Tomorrow 2, but it's with a different cast. They go back to the 1700s, and the aliens attack a Native American tribe on the plains. I'm telling you, it's perfect.
Premaro. Edge of Premaro.
Premaro.
Let's just mash it all up and create something stupid.
All right, what's next?
My Comic Planet says, I love this movie. I know there have been rumors of a sequel for years. Do you guys know if it will ever happen, and would you want a sequel? Well,
man, sounds like.
Do I want a sequel? Yes, I'd be down for seeing them revisit this. Like, if the one person who wrote in the theory is right, and he's now the Omega, that creates a whole world of possibilities you can get into. But literally every day that passes lessens the chances of it. Tom Cruise is now in his 60s.
Plus, I don't know. You could make a sequel that might approach being as good as this, but it's kind of neat that there isn't.
Yeah.
Because
what would they do? Like, that's what I was thinking. What would be the new thing that would
other Omegas come looking for him?
Yeah, I know. And then
all right, what's
whiny
next?
stuff would happen. Dr. Nova says, I saw this in cinemas and I had the standee from the theater, which my parents hated because it took up too much room. I still love it.
It's a true story. I love standees. Obviously, we got a Henry Cavill one in here, but my wife, Anne, the corporate office she works in, they're closing down just the physical office because so many people in that office now work remotely. So they're closing it down, and there's a free-for-all for people. Like the chair I'm sitting in came from that office because they're like, anybody want to take stuff, take stuff. The hot item, though, that everybody wants is a Robert Downey Jr. standee. That I think that's from Iron Man 1. And that's like, so everybody's taking all these desks and chairs and TVs, but they have to raffle off the Robert Downey Jr. standee because everybody wants that.
When I was at this, I don't know if everyone knows Best Buy. I used to work at Best Buy, and we used to set up the DVD section or whatever. Yeah. The standees, it would be a week, and if you put your name in back of that standee at the end of the week, you took it. So I have Thor from Thor 1. Yeah, so like that seems like the easier way. A raffle?
You should
with
bring
the big
that into the office.
Yeah, man.
Well, I mean, oh yeah, I should.
Yeah.
They're all over the wall.
Bring it into the office.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going here. What's next?
Insommatic 101 says, besides Ex Machina, this is the best sci-fi action movie of 2010s. I would say it's probably the best. Ex Machina is more of a lower key film.
Yeah, that was definitely a lower key film. I still, you know what? I keep forgetting. What year did Serenity come out?
I think that's in the aughts.
I thought it was 10,
like
2010.
was it? Yeah, maybe 2010.
Okay, if it was 2010,
Or
then
12.
I would say that would be my favorite just sci-fi movie. Like I love Serenity.
That was a good movie.
I liked it even more than the Firefly series.
I had no idea what that was about. I don't know how I watched it, but after I watched it, I was like, this is a pretty good. I didn't even know it was based on a TV.
Misbehave.
Yeah. All right, what's next?
Jamie Sunday says, wasn't he trapped in the loop for like 3,000 years? I mean, he could have been. I mean,
we literally don't know.
Yeah.
Like I think I read somewhere that we saw like 60 something restarts. But I mean, that could have been 600 restarts. That could have been 6,000.
Yeah.
We just simply don't know.
You don't
how long
know.
he was in it. They never kind of mention it. But I guess with maybe the comic reveals
Right.
it. But,
Yeah, maybe.
but just because it was that way in the Magna, I keep wanting to say Magna. Manga. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the way they did it in the movie, but it's a really good question. All right,
It
what's
is a
next?
good question. Now I want to go back and count them up. Power is power. Says Paxton's reaction to the truck death had me thinking.
Oh my God! That was
Every time went on after he died. Every time he dies is really starting the day over. Is it a new timeline? How many court martials did Emily Blunt get? Well, I mean, that's a really interesting question. I mean, from an existential standpoint, do those timelines go on? But I think no, they end. You know, it's you're going back. It's literally the same timeline that more stuff can happen in. But then you go back. It's not an alternate timeline. It's the same timeline being played out differently.
Now, if you did it by Avengers Endgame theorem, then by Avengers Endgame logic, that every time he reset, he actually was creating a new reality that he
Right.
started off. So yeah, that would literally mean in the current timeline he's in, he breaks his leg, Emily Blunt shoots him, but that timeline keeps going. It's like now all of a sudden she's got 20 witnesses. You just murdered a fellow officer.
Also, what was he-
He's court-martialed?
What was his line? Boy, what the hell were you thinking?
Oh yeah,
Roll
when
that.
like what the? Oh my
And
God,
they didn't
that's
show
so
him.
funny.
They didn't show him either, which was
No.
great.
And I
You
love
could just
Pax's
imagine.
reaction when he rolls onto the truck and gets crunched.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, it's just a great,
So good.
great reaction.
All right, what's next?
Tim Platt says, so technically Tom Cruise was Alpha and Omega.
Well, no,
Laugh out
remember, by
loud.
the time he was Omega, he was no longer the Alpha.
Right.
But yes, if you had, then technically speaking, he would be the Alpha and the Omega. It's a little Old Testament there. For
That's
you.
right.
All right, what's next?
My Comic Planet says there was an alternate ending filmed where the humans lose. The writer Chris McQuarrie says that the ending involves a human soldier accidentally eliminating an alpha during the final battle, despite being warned by Cage or Cruise not to do so.
By the way, My Comic Planet tipped in like $20. Thank you so much for supporting us on that level, man.
I didn't know that. Maybe I did know that.
I didn't
but
know that either.
That's interesting.
I don't.
Is that on the Blu-ray?
I don't know. Now I want to go back and
Or
look.
that might be like just written on the script or something like that.
I would say this. I know some people say they really like it when movies have alternate endings. To me, what that tells me was that the storyteller never had a clear vision for their story.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't like that. I do not like that. We got alternate endings. Oh, then the storyteller never had a clear vision for what they story did.
Come to
Like,
think
I don't
of
like that.
Come to think of it, this would be a great director's commentary movie.
I'd
see what he.
love that.
Yeah.
Yep.
This one would actually be one to have that on.
I would love that. All right, what's next?
I don't know if they're. I'm going to go look now. Gianni Vakura says Jax, aka Firestorm himself, was part of J Squad. That is true.
That's why I recognized
Wait,
him.
who is this?
He's the one who took his name from a fallen comrade friend and then gave his. He was the one who was at the end, who was in the guns on the ship, going, "Come on,
Right,
we
but
gotta
the
go, we gotta
Firestorm
go."
reference, what's that?
That's from not Edge of Tomorrow. That was from Legends of Tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and on Legends of Tomorrow and Flash.
Okay, I'll pretend to know who you're talking about.
All right, what's next?
Because I've never watched any
Haskell
of
420 says, hi, John and Rob. Also, the humor top notch
Yes.
and perfectly placed every time. Seeing it again for the 20 plus time, there's not one out of place joke. I agree. Dude, the humor on this, the way they
I'm right doing his little.
How many times?
The way they skirt, they do a perfect job because that could have ruined the tone. This could have been a goof. This movie could have been a goof. You could have played it more of a comedy, but it's...
But it could have also been buried under its own heaviness.
Yep.
And that's like Marvel maybe has lost that balance a little bit in the last little bit. But for the first decade or so, the Marvel balance of that is great. They always knew when to put in humor.
Yes.
And maybe now they go a little bit too overboard sometimes. But I mean, if this movie didn't have well-placed humor, then I think the audience, I think we could have felt it overly heavy, and we maybe could have suffocated on it.
Totally agree, but that's what makes it great is the tone.
Yep.
It's never too heavy, but it's so much fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Even though many people die.
All right, what's next?
Well, James Wheeler says, I think you've pushed me over the edge to this being my favorite Tom Cruise movie.
By the way, James Wheeler tipped in $50 to say
James,
that. Thank you, James,
thank
for
you
supporting
so
us on
much
that
for
level. I'm sitting here, listen, when you really think about it and talk about it, you just realize just how brilliant the movie is. It's because it works as a great thinking man's movie about the whole thing about these obstacles we have to overcome. Here's a time paradox problem we got to solve and blah, blah. But it's also just a great grab a bag of chips and a Coke and just sit back and be entertained by it's got all of that.
And another thing, again, I go back to the writing, the whole structure of this story.
Yep.
Even when Tom Cruise like goes off on his own, you mentioned him when he's sitting at the bar, and then they've lost in France, and they go out and you see coming up the Thames, just these creatures are coming to London. You know the world's over with, and it's so cool.
That scene when he's standing on that bridge. And you see just in the real far distance, just a disturbance in the water gets closer. And you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
The world is screwed.
The world is screwed.
Oh,
it's so well done.
Such a good shot.
So good.
All right, what's next?
J Jav Dav, or J Jav Dav, I guess so it is.
Yeah,
J-Jav?
right.
Never seen this movie, but I never get to catch a live show. I just want to say love you guys. Hope y'all having a great day. Stay blessed.
Well, thank you, J Jav.
Watch it, please.
J-Jav, you've got to watch this movie. You're going to love it so much.
Oh, yeah. Wait.
Thank us later.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and even though we just spoiled it doesn't matter. It does not matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I'd seen the movie before, and yet I was able to sit down yesterday and watch it again and be totally thoroughly
wildly entertained. This movie's wildly entertaining. It's so good.
All right, what's next?
Power's Power says, I once asked who started over more, Bill Murray in Groundhog Day or Tom Cruise here. Learning Tom now after the rewatch. Oh, he starts over way more times.
It depends. Because what do they, like, I've heard them say that Bill Murray, like, did 6 or 7 years of, because how long would it have taken him to learn the piano? Like, to the degree he was able to play. That's not something you learn in a week.
No, it's true.
So, I mean, I'm not sure. I would love to, someday, in a year or two from now, I'm going to take a weekend. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to do a triple header of 3 movies I thoroughly enjoy. Groundhog Day, Happy Death Day, and Edge of Tomorrow. I'm going to watch them all as a triple header one day. And maybe I'll see who had to go through it most. It's a good question.
That is actually, now I want to know the answer.
Yeah. All right, what's next?
There's got to be some online BuzzFeed article about it. My Comic Planet says, according to the Japan Times, the author of the original novel for this movie got the idea for the story from playing video games,
There you go.
constantly losing his life and having to reset or respawn. Pretty cool. So the manga is based on a novel, which, wow, okay.
But even to your original point about the stages of the story feeling like stages of a video game.
Yeah.
Like, I was recently playing through God of War. And it's the same thing.
Yep.
You get to a certain level, you're in a certain village, you're in a certain cavern, you're facing a certain thing, and you're dying 100 times trying to figure your way out of it. You get out of it just to be thrust into another level that you've got to figure out and get your way through and all that kind of stuff. And maybe that's why we as the audience were watching it and we're feeling every time Tom Cruise is able to advance to the next stage, we feel that sense of accomplishment too, as an audience.
And at the same time, when you start getting it so much that you get through to this part or whatever part you're stuck on, you start getting bored. You have to wait for that thing to pass by, you know, and then you go past it and then you cross. Like, there's a certain point where if you can't progress in a game, if you know everything up to it, you start getting bored until you get past that.
Until you get
certain
past
part.
That's when you used to get the old cheat manuals you buy.
Up, down, left, right.
Yeah, all that stuff.
And is that it? And guys, that'll do it for this meeting of Movie Club as we sat around here and discussed my favorite Tom Cruise film, Edge of Tomorrow, screw it, we're just going to call it All You Need Is Kill. Thank you guys so much for joining us and chatting about this movie together. A special thank you to all you guys who sent in the super chats, number one, because you gave us great points and things to think about. But number two, you supported the channel as you did it, and all of us involved with the channel, thank you guys so much for that support. I want to thank my fellow movie club members, of course, Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at RMBurnett, find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or find me at postgeeksingularity.com.
And of course, Ray Ora. Ray, where can people find you?
Ray Ora with a 0. I can't wait to be doing our movie club on Edge of Tomorrow.
That's a very meta joke.
I did. I instantly regret it now.
I think that was good. I think that was good. And of course, you guys can follow me on social media on Instagram or on Twitter, simply at John Campea. All right, guys, that'll do it for now. A little heads up about tomorrow. Of course, we got the John Campea Show in the morning. Make sure you guys come on back and join us for that. And tomorrow, don't forget, is game day.
Game day.
She-Hulk debuts tomorrow night, so we will be doing our pregame show at 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, 3 p.m. Los Angeles time. So if you guys are looking forward to She-Hulk, make sure you guys join us for that pregame show as we talk about it, get all revved up for it. And of course, our She-Hulk after show will happen on Thursday. All right, guys, special thank you to fact checker Jonathan Boyko, our producer back there running the show. So guys, for everybody here, my name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.